Hi, I'm Tom Hendrickson for the Agile Online Summit, where we bring great Agilists to the world. In this session, we're going to talk about the true value of agility with Allen Holub. Allen, introduce yourself to the people here at the Agile Online Summit.
I always get stymied by these notions of introducing myself. Is that I'm an agile guy, I suppose. Now, I started out life as a hardware designer long ago. I built robots.
Wow.
We were building robots back at a time when there was no support for that kind of thing. We had a CPU in the machine that had no compiler, and there were no real-time operating systems. So I had to build an operating system, and I had to write a couple of compilers. And by the time I got done doing that, I was a software guy instead of a hardware guy. And this was for a small company that turns out we were working in an agile way. So one of the earliest experience I had as a programmer was working in what amounted to an agile shop, even though the word agile didn't exist yet, as we were all just doing things in ways that seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
And so as Agile came along and became kind of solidified, I sort of became an Agile person because I had years of experience at it, because I'd been doing it even before Agile was a thing.
Yeah.
And that was so that's kind of my background. Is in the interim, I've written a lot of books. I've written a bunch of magazine articles, worked for Dr. Dobbs for a long time in Java World.
Yeah.
But my main interest has always been on how to be as effective as possible doing this programming thing, in a world where it seems like the whole industry is trying to be as ineffective as possible. So they're putting as much effort as they can into doing things badly, right? It's as if they want to throw money down a hole, and so they're working really hard to do that.
Yep.
And so I try and help with that. So right now I work as a consultant mostly. I do a lot of Agile related stuff. I do a lot of training. Yeah. I do a lot of coming into a company and just kind of looking around and seeing what everything's doing, and talk to C-levels about what's wrong and what's right and how to fix things.
Yeah.
I'll do everything from executive coaching on one end to sitting down and pairing with the teams and writing some software. Mm-hmm. So there's all of that is involved in that whole Agile equation. So it kind of depends on.
You're involved in a lot of pieces there. Then, if you're going from executives down to sitting with the coders, you're seeing the kind of the whole picture, then, aren't you, Alan?
Yeah, which is important. One of the things about Agile and agility in general is that it's all about the system. Mm-hmm. People talk about people when in fact they should be talking about systems. Yeah. One of the ongoing threads that happens on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. So if anybody wants to communicate
you are. I will attest.
That's a good way
I'm
to
amazed
do it, right?
that you're Alan on Twitter.
I'm at Allen Holub. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk to you. But one of the things that happens on Twitter is there's a large kind of authoritarian tendency among the comments that I see in Twitter. We were just talking about that today. In fact, somebody was talking about. We were talking about accountability and responsibility and those kinds of things. And I see those as taskmaster terms, right? This is the guy cracking the whip, saying, well, you're responsible if something goes wrong, not me. Yeah. It's never my fault, right? It's always the fault of the person who's doing the work, and I don't have to provide any support. What I have to do is crack the whip and make you work harder, and I really hate that. Yeah. I hate everything about that. And the more and more I have come to believe that if people think that people are the problem, the actual problem is the system within which they work.
Yes.
And that if you fix the system, everything will, for the most part, be fine, as people are not lazy. Yeah. People are not stupid. People are not wanting to steal things from you. You don't have to monitor them all the time. You can trust them to actually do what they're good at. Yeah. And too much of what I see in business is the opposite of that as the core assumption. Mm-hmm. You need accountability. You need responsibility. What does that mean? It means basically, I think you're a lazy ne'er-do-well who's not going to do a damn thing. And unless I force you to formally say I'm responsible for X, you're just not going to do it. You're going to go off and play canasta all day. And it's an insulting, awful way of looking at the world, but it's also not a very effective way to run a company. Yeah. So what you need is if you have a culture, sort of a RAMP culture, right? The relatedness, autonomy, mastery, purpose culture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then you don't need accountability. You don't need responsibility. If people are motivated because they think they're working on something that's important, that's going to help people, and they're working with people that they like, and they can do it the best way they know how without people getting in their way. Right? You don't need to say, I want you to formally declare responsibility for such and such. People will do their best job just because they love it.
Yeah.
That's a much better world. That's the world I want to be in. And I don't see enough of that.
Yeah. So Allen, though, today you want to talk to us about the true value of agility. I know we were talking about it earlier, but kind of explain what that means in your terms.
Well, there's been a meme around for years now about how awful Agile has become. Andy Hunt started things off a few years ago where he was saying Agile has come to mean do half of Scrum badly and use Jira.
Yeah.
And he's right about that. And more recently, Kent Beck was interviewed, and he was talking about how Agile has basically become a religion full of hollow and empty ceremonies promulgated by a priesthood that doesn't understand what those ceremonies are for anymore.
Yeah.
And, and I completely agree with that. Is that what's happened with me, at least personally, is that I have come to the conclusion that literally every one of the things that people think of as Agile, Scrum and Safe and all this stuff, is just completely worthless garbage, and we should just toss it all out. Is that the amount of damage that those things have done is just enormous. And even something like Scrum, which is very lightweight, is doing a vast amount of damage. Yeah. You just look at how it's implemented, right? A company says, we're a Scrum shop. And what does that mean? It means like everybody gets the same training. Everybody's supposed to do the same thing. They're marching in lockstep. There's no flexibility at all. Well, if you have an inflexible, rigid process, you can't be Agile. At least not by by definition, not by any meaning of the word that I have. So if everybody in your company is doing Scrum, you're not an Agile organization.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what the Sutherlands of the world are preaching, because they get money by having everybody in the world do Scrum. So I guess I'm getting very cynical, but I think of Jeff Sutherland as a snake oil salesman at this point. What he's selling is something that does damage. It does active damage, but he makes a lot of money by doing it. So he's going to say it's the salvation of the world. That was a sort of the low point of that is at the beginning of the COVID crisis. Jeff had this horrific tweet, which he subsequently removed, but he said, the hospitals that are doing Scrum are saving people's lives and none of the other ones are. And I go, Jesus. Wow. What's that about? First of all, whatever the hospitals are doing, it's not Scrum the way that he intends it to be Scrum, right? Is that maybe they're having a daily coordination meeting of some sort. But then you don't have a product owner in a hospital, right? Yes. So everything's twisted around. And he's saying, I have the solution, right? It's that it's a religious approach, right? I have the solution. Go with me and buy my certificates and you'll be healthy and safe. And if you don't do that, you're going to die. And I just was appalled by that. And a lot of other people were appalled by it, which is to say the tweet disappeared within about 2 hours. But I don't like that attitude, and I'm seeing it too much.